Hi, everybody. This is Logan Moore here with Comicbook.com. I am joined today by the director of Batman Arkham Shadow, Ryan Payton. Ryan, hello. It's good to talk to you. I know we've been trying to set this up for a hot minute here.
We have been. No, but really happy to be able to do this chat with you, Logan. And yeah, just it was fun to have you come in and play the game pre-launch, and then now we get to talk about post-launch. And I don't have to tiptoe around all the sensitive topics and spoiler stuff. We're going to dive right into it. It sounds like, huh?
Yeah, that's going to be the focus of this discussion is this is very much going to be sort of a postscript for Batman Arkham Shadow. If you have not played the game yet, go play the game. We're going to talk about all spoilers here and we're going to dive into it up front. So this is your chance to leave the video and come back after you finish the game if you don't want to be spoiled on anything that happens within the story. Um, but yeah, you kind of put I visited the studio earlier this year. It was very fun in hindsight to see how you guys danced around so many things that we asked about that day because we had so many questions that we lobbied at you. And it was just very funny in retrospect to see like what your responses were because there were so many secrets that you guys were hiding in this game. I mean, let's just start. I just want to start here. Like, how early did you know that you wanted this to be a sort of like Two-Face origin game?
Well, yeah, first of all, yeah, I do kind of miss the dance routine now that the game's out. It was
Because now I
fun.
can
It
just
was
ask this stuff to you
Yeah,
and
we could just talk openly. It's really fun. But yeah, and we're very careful not to lie, right? But
yeah.
we had our prepared answers and stuff like that. That was fun. But yeah, now that we can talk openly about it, to answer your question about Two-Face, I think from probably the first few weeks, I think we knew that we wanted the game to be to have Two-Face as a major villain in the game. I think we just that was something that came from me and my discussions with Warner Brothers and DC and working with the writing team. I think it was less of a question of our big villain will be Two-Face and more of a question of how do we get there and how does that factor into the Rat King? Because the Rat King as a concept really did start off as him being an original villain, and and we didn't know how him and Two-Face were going to interact with one another. And the idea that Harvey is actually his shadow side, the kind of the more evil side of Two-Face, is the Rat King. That's an idea that took some time to get to.
Well, that kind of, I mean, you're naturally leading it in the direction I was
Uh,
going to go too with the Rat King. Like, what were your original ideas for the Rat King? Because it is very much set up throughout this game that there's going to be this grand reveal, and it's not disappointing per se to get to the end and it's like, oh, it's Two-Face, but like I, for a majority of the game, thought you guys were crafting an original character, and it was just gonna like come out of left field towards the end with like something new that you guys had introduced to the
mm.
Arkhamverse. Was that ever a thing that you guys were going to do, or like when did this kind of combination of like you said, Rat King being Harvey Dent's like evil half or his second half kind of start to take shape?
Yeah, idea for the Rat King, yeah, it initially came very early on in the development. The whole idea of the rats uh, and a new villain that we didn't have to have a lot of baggage from the other games for, and and there was times where the Rat King was going to be multiple people. There was times where the Rat King was going to be, uh, yeah, we had so many different ideas that we were exploring, but when it came time to really commit to what the story was going to be about, um, that that was really when I kind of had to brush a lot of the cool ideas that we were exploring to the side and get to the heart of the story and get to the heart of the game and get to the heart of the theme of the game about the shadow, which I knew that the shadow was really becoming a big part of what we wanted to do. And people are, I think, would be for how do I say this? I think it'd be totally fine for people to accuse me of being a little bit kind of cheeky or cute with this answer, but I really do think in some ways the Rat King is an original villain in the sense that we got to explore the side of Harvey Dent that does eventually become that alter, that persona of Two-Face. And to me, it's an origin story of that persona. Um, and I just really wanted to explore that, and that's what ultimately we ended up doing.
Well, I love that you guys do that not only with Two-Face in the game, but a lot of the different characters, like their second halves, whether that be, Jonathan Crane or Batman, the sequence where he's fighting his own shadow was awesome. One of the best parts of the game.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed that, yeah, that overall theme throughout the entire game. And when again, like did you guys know did all of those ideas just sort of naturally kind of coalesce and come together, or did you really know that you wanted to hit on this duality of a lot of different characters that are specifically focused upon within the game? Even going to like Joe Chill towards the end with that reveal, like you
Mm.
see that he's a much different person than he clearly once was as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a good way to explain the process and how we came to the story that you end up playing in a concise way because it really, we did go through the typical creative process where things can get really messy, where you get excited about different things, you explore different paths, you hit a lot of different dead ends. And and I find that one of the most scary, but also one of the most exciting points in the creative process is that point where you have to commit and the clearer you are and the more conviction you have, I think it tends to yield a better product and a better story. And I think where we landed was somewhere in the late summer of last year in 2023, uh, is when we had this really pivotal story offsite with all of our writers gathered in Seattle at the office that you visited us at. And and we just had to commit, and that's when we committed to the game's title, the the concept of shadow, and that would have to touch every single element of the game, including what we're doing on the visual side of things with the real time lighting, whether as it relates to the shadow Batman boss fight that you referenced, and then also every character, allowing us to explore the shadow of every single character, and just fully committing to that. But yeah, it was 2 years plus of us exploring in the wilderness with different ideas, and yeah, it all came down to that really pivotal moment, and that's where everything became clear, and everything came about just execution.
I've heard a lot of other developers say that in the past, that like when it comes time to make a decision, like it's hard because you have so many other ideas of like
Yeah.
things you would like to do or paths you would like to go explore, different ideas you might have, but like just making a choice and committing to that choice is more often than not like the best, which is hard. It's a hard thing to do
And you have to do that too, in your work as well. You could
to some
when
degree. Yeah.
you Yeah, absolutely. When you have to think about what your story is, it can't be headline, here's these five ideas. It's this. It's this what's the most important thing, and this is the through line through everything. And it's as you know, it's very hard to choose sometimes.
Yes, it is. Sure, not as difficult as it was for you guys with this game, but making choices every day. I'm curious, like with the ending specifically, and I've seen some people talking about this, about the ending being anticlimactic because there's no, you don't throw hands with Two-Face when you get to the end of the game. That
Yeah.
that the shadow fight with Batman's shadow or Bruce's shadow really is, in a lot of ways, kind of the final boss fight of sorts within the game. Um, did you ever have any sort of idea there to do anything where you're throwing hands with Two-Face, like I was saying, or was that ending always kind of where you guys wanted to sort of leave it?
I couldn't be prouder of the ending of the game, even though I know on paper it may not be the type of ending that players may have expected or maybe wanted, and that's totally fine. But on paper, yeah, I think that you could critique it, you could give it a good critique, which is uh, you're not throwing haymakers at the final villain of the game. And to me, that was really important. Is that we have this amazing climax with the Shadow Batman boss fight, and what the team did with that whole sequence with Jonathan Crane um, and and walking through the flashbacks, but the fantasy, the dark fantasy that Bruce is going through, where we do I think an incredible twist on the scene that everybody's seen so many times,
Hmm.
which is the crime alley scene and the death of the Waynes, uh, but doing it with a twist and watching Batman fantasize about being there and killing Joe Chill in front of his parents, protecting his parents, and then being there for his foster brother, Harvey Dent, and killing Harvey Dent's father in front of Harvey Dent to protect him. That is the dark fantasy, and I love that we got to have players be completely immersed in the game and to be able to experience that. And then with uh, just such an incredible boss that the team built. So that to me is, yeah, as you mentioned, is the climax. And then one of the reasons I'm so proud of the end of the game is that we committed to the theme of the game and our commitment to the story and our commitment to the character arc of Bruce, that he had to walk into this in the shoes of those that he dismissed, the people that his shadow tell him are should be rejected, and are dirty and are undesirable criminals. He has to become a criminal. He has to go into prison. And as through the course of the game, he starts to empathize with those folks. And to the point, and I think we wouldn't have been true to our story. We wouldn't have been true to Bruce's arc if he was throwing punches at the Rat King in the final sequence. He shows empathy and and has a and there is a peaceful resolution at the end of the game, and may not forgive the man that killed his parents, but chose not to witness or allow Harvey to kill Joe
Yeah.
Chill. And so for those reasons and more, I'm so proud of what we did with the ending.
Well, it's funny because like I think within the larger Arkham series too, like in some ways like you can't win because been the main criticism of Arkham Asylum for 15
Ah.
years? It's like, oh, the ending fight when Joker gets big and he's the Hulk and you got to fight him.
Yep.
It's so lame. That's the worst part of the game. And it's like, okay, that's like the polar opposite here of like what you guys have done. And like in different camps, I've seen people, I've seen a lot of praise for the ending, but a lot of people are still like, oh, I wish there was one last, tussle there at the end with Two-Face. And it's like, well, it's kind of, I agree with everything you said with how it ended, and I thought you guys had the total right approach there. But
Well,
it's funny that
thank you. I mean,
we've got
yeah,
two total different entries in the series, ended on very different notes from one another.
yeah, and I mean, I don't, like I said, I completely accept the critique that we don't have a big brawl at the end of the game. Uh, all I would say is to those who feel that way, um, look, I wish I could give you a seat in our design meetings about a final Harvey Dent fight, which is something that we felt like we were embodying and living through probably the same kind of design discussions that the folks at Rocksteady had when they're working on the Arkham games, which is how do you take somebody like Batman who can essentially best anybody in a physical fight, uh, and make that interesting with Harvey Dent. I'm not saying it's impossible, but oftentimes, it could go into a predator sequence, or we had an idea for a chase sequence, which would be kind of, I think,
Yeah,
pretty cool. So we could have done a big action packed ending, but when it came down to it, I think we decided to just fully commit to our themes and our story, and again, that's why I accept the criticism, but so proud of what we did.
Two-Face isn't that kind of bad guy either. I mean, he's really not. I mean, even look at something like The Dark Knight, like the ending kind of climax there is they're not going toe to toe, tumbling
Hmm.
across rooftops fighting each other or anything like that. He's a very different type of villain in Batman's rogue gallery. Um, Last sort of thing on Two-Face I wanted to ask you about.
Sure.
Um, Again, this is like his origin story, and by the time we see him again, I think it's Arkham City, and it's
Yes.
obviously clear that him and Batman have had plenty of other run-ins over the years. Have you guys thought about like any other like future stories? Because it really does feel like this is setting up the next one. I mean, with the way you guys end it before it cuts to credits, it's just the beginning
Hmm.
here. Um, Obviously, have you guys had any other talks about like what you would want to do if you were to come back to Two-Face here again in the future? Or are you just kind of okay with leaving things, putting a pin in it and just kind of leaving it where it's at for now?
The way that we treated the story for Arkham Shadow and the overarching Arkhamverse lore was as guests primarily, as like almost as Boy Scouts, and we want to leave the place better than it was when we got there. And so we respected every single lore element from any of the previous Arkham games, even if they didn't entirely line up, which I'm not going to. name names, but there are moments where things do not line up perfectly. But then we bent over backwards to ensure that they did connect,
Hmm.
and that was a lot of fun, and it was a good challenge. Uh, and I think that we did right by the community and by our partners at Warner Brothers and DC to do it that way. And that even extends to the overarching story and how we ended it, which is if there's if there's an opportunity to continue to work on this franchise, of course we'd love to do so. But we didn't write the story or end the game in a way that it required another entry into the franchise for everything that happens in Arkham Shadow to make sense. We wanted it to be an end-to-end experience with a great ending, middle, or beginning, middle, and end. And I think we did that. But and yeah, and for if there's ever any developer who works on between the timeline of Arkham Shadow and Arkham City, and there's plenty of room for for Two-Face to do lots of interesting things, I think.
I think a lot of times fans are, I mean, I do this myself, but you're wanting every little gap to be filled between every little timeline. I know
Mm,
it's like a big Star Wars thing too, where well, this new thing takes place between episode 6 and episode 5 and in this one
mm,
specific time period. Everybody wants like a full context of everything that's happening between every specific timeline, but I kind of like these like large gaps of unknown because it just I'm sure it's nice for you guys too, because it's just like if you ever get to play around in this universe again, it's like cool. We can kind of dive right in here and do something new off of in whatever space we're in here, and we're not too beholden by this, and this, and like you said, you had to bend over backwards at times to make sure that certain things did work out. Um, so
yeah,
yeah,
I can speak on that a little bit, which is we intentionally left the timeline between Arkham Origins and Arkham Shadow fairly vague. We offered up a few things, hints of what happened, including uh, a very long Halloween inspired uh, reference to Gordon and Dent and Batman teaming up to take down Carmine Falcone and send him to prison. That all happens off camera. That all happens between the events of Arkham Origins Blackgate and and Arkham Shadow. Uh, and that's fertile ground for hopefully another developer or comic book series or something, some media to explore it if the opportunity arises. But I'm with you. I like to have that. I like those gaps in these larger timelines because not everything needs to be spelled out.
yeah, I yeah, totally agree. You mentioned Blackgate. This was the biggest thing that I felt like you guys hid pre-launch. Is that like the majority of the
Yes.
game is in Blackgate? Um, when did you decide on that? And like, did you guys think about talking about that pre-release, or did you really want this to be the sort of like shocking revelation of sorts that like the of what the main crux of this game is Batman going undercover as Matches Malone in Blackgate? And because yeah, that more so than anything else really took me aback kind of once I realized what was going on, because then the title card hits too once you're starting to have that realization like, oh, this is the game now. um,
There's a I think the short version of the answer is that there's just a lot of Metal Gear Solid in my approach to this game, especially early on in discussions with Warner Brothers and DC about the title. And we had early alignment that we wanted the game to be heavily inspired by Arkham Asylum in terms of structure, game length, scope, and so on. And when it came time to deciding where would be a good place to do a more constrained Metroidvania style game, we we very quickly zeroed in on Blackgate Prison because Arkham Asylum wasn't going to be really available to us for timeline reasons, and we wanted to do something different. And I've always wanted to do a game set in a prison. And Ryan Darcy, one of the design directors on the title, really wanted to make a brawler game. And we thought, okay, what would be a better place to do just a really raw brawler experience than inside of a prison? Um, and and that's when Warner Brothers suggested that we explore the idea of having Batman into the prison not as Bruce Wayne, but as Matches Malone. And once we fully embraced that idea, uh, it everything started to kind of come together for me that you know what, this could be our take on the Metal Gear Solid 2 twist, where we've got a different hero in a sense, where you're entering a different environment than all that's been promoted, and it's a fun twist and it's a fun surprise for players as long as you can keep it under wraps. But with a really big asterisk next to it, which is unlike Metal Gear Solid 2, we need to ensure that the vast majority of the playtime is still as the hero that you want to play as, because the great sin of Metal Gear Solid 2 in many people's eyes is that you don't play as Snake the majority of the time, you play as Raiden. And so we didn't want to do that. So we had this internal discussion and this internal acronym, which was TTB, Time Till Batman. This idea that when you become matches, that's when the timer starts. That, oh, this is cool. Prison fantasy, and I'm playing as Matches Malone. I'm undercover, and there's like really interesting. It's a nice break from being Batman, but we can't overdo it. We can't allow that to last for too long. And I think the team did a really fantastic job of balancing out the play time as Batman with the interspersed elements that you play as matches.
I totally agree. Like at first I was like, okay, when I
Eh.
was in the first matches sequence, I was like, how long is this gonna last? Because you're gonna be Batman here again soon, but like when and like how is that gonna happen? Because you hadn't seen the cave or anything like that until that point, so you didn't know
Mhm.
exactly what was going on. But that's fun. Like it got my gear spinning in my head. Definitely,
And that's
definitely.
it. That was the whole point, and I'm really happy that worked out for you and others too. Which is, we could have spelled it all out, and what fun is that? The fun is, I find so much of the fun of the work that we all get to do, whether it's what you're doing, Logan, or whether it's the work that we're doing as developers, or what the marketing team gets to do, is that we've got this franchise that people love. We've got this character that people love. We've got this opportunity to do something different and new with the Quest 3, and so much of the fun is leading up to launch, and then experiencing it based on the information you have in your mind, and then having that play out as you're playing the game, which is which is why I highly encourage everybody uh, to not view spoilers before they jump into the game, because I think you're really diminishing part of the enjoyment of what this game does, and other games that I think are really careful about holding their secrets back.
I mean, I think the Metal Gear Solid reference, what you're talking about there, is an appropriate one because I don't think I've had a game. I mean, I think this is common in both like TVs and film, where like, things are spelled out a little too much pre-release. I mean,
Mm,
trailers seem to show everything now, like for
yeah,
movies specifically. So it's nice to play something where you're kind of blind and you don't know what's going on. Um,
so much
makes it
fun.
makes it that much more fun to go through. I think the Blackgate setting was fun for a lot of reasons too. I think it allowed you guys to probably allowed you to tie together Origins and Arkham Origins Blackgate a little bit more directly and maybe not have to worry about that so
Yeah,
much. That would be my assumption. I want to talk about the Joker though. Obviously, he's in this game, not shown, but you can hear him. He's through the wall. The Arkham series is so synonymous with the Joker. This is like the Joker's series, it feels like in some way. Was there ever any discussion on including him that much more than you did? I assume from the beginning you knew you had to incorporate him somehow because, again, he's so synonymous with the series. But did it ever develop into anything beyond what it was included in the game here?
I think for me and the team early on, and again with our partners at Warner Brothers and DC, I think we knew that this had to be a game that didn't need to depend on Joker for it to work. and and we were listening to the community, and I was watching countless hours of YouTube videos and commentary about the Arkham franchise, between what happened since the release of Arkham Knight and Arkham VR, all the way up to when we were released. And the overwhelming majority of people of commentary on the game was that people love Joker, but they're ready for something new. Um, and we listened to that, and I think we agreed. And so my approach early on, and early on that lasted until quite late into development, was no Joker.
Okay.
And the reason because being is that I didn't want myself and the team to have that as a backup plan, or he was, because when you have Joker in your story, he often takes up all the oxygen in the room. And so it wasn't until quite late in development when everything is starting to get locked down and we're getting ready to commit to everything when one of our writers kind of pulled me aside and said, "Hey, we probably can't ship this game without any Joker, right?" And turns out that our partners at DC thought this was thinking the same thing, that we have to do something. And thankfully, we were working with Troy Baker um, for with the Harvey Dent character as well, and so it was a natural, and also because coming off of the fact that Joker's next experience appearance after Origins would be in our game, so it's just really a natural uh, conversation to have with Troy about reprising his roles as Joker. And so, yeah, the depiction that you see in Arkham Shadow is really uh, the product of constraint and uh, but respect to the character, and to try to ensure that we acknowledge that the character exists. We've had really a lot of fun with him, and I really liked the experience that
Mhm.
we created. But really trying to be careful about not having the game be overshadowed, pardon the pun, by Joker.
I mean, I for the very little bit that he is in the game, I feel like it was perfect. Him being the only person to see through the match's facade was perfect and really just links Batman and Joker together in this larger series. I think it's great. I really
Thank
love what
you.
you guys did with that. Um,
I can't
and
take
yeah,
credit for that one. That's from, I think, Chris Sims, one of our writers. I think he came up with that as he was writing that sequence, and I thought it was brilliant. I think he's totally right.
and I love that
Like, of
you give
course, of
the
course, Joker would see through that.
I love that you give the option to ask him about what he thinks about, or you ask him something about Dr. Quinzel as well. You kind of get
Yep,
his early
yep,
thoughts on that before she becomes Harley.
yep,
Lot of fun moments there.
yep.
And I thought you guys
Absolutely.
did. Was there? I wanted to ask about Troy too. Was there any hesitancy at all when you guys brought that to him, or was he immediately just like, "Oh yeah, totally jumping back into
No,
this"?
working with Troy Baker has been one of the great partnerships in the project, along with Roger Craig Smith and Kari Payton, who I've worked with since Metal Gear Solid 4, and then also be able to work with Mark Ralston, who played Jim Gordon in our game, and was just an absolute joy to work with. Tara Strong, my first time I got to work with Tara Strong since, I think, Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops in 2006, I think. So it's been a long time coming to work with her again. But to answer your question about Troy in particular, no hesitancy whatsoever. He was always all in, all the time, and very involved in the story process, and asking lots of terrific questions and wanting to dive deep into the experience, into the game, into the story, and the behind the scenes, and also would get on calls with us with with our with our consultant, Dr. Eric Bender, who comes with a psychiatry background, and reviewed all of our scripts and answered all of our questions about anything related to mental health and psychiatry and human psychology. And Troy was absolutely fascinated by that, and had Dr. Bender's guidance really influence his performances as much as Dr. Bender's guidance influenced our story and our writing.
That's really cool. Troy did fantastic in this game, and I've seen that sentiment. And Troy does fantastic in every game, every
Yes.
project he's in.
Yes.
But his performance as Harvey was great. It made me wish he had more screen time, but alas, maybe in the future here. Um, I know we're running out of time. I want to ask you one more very specific thing that I know you guys
Yeah.
have teed up here. Robin, Dick Grayson, Nightwing, whatever. Um, that early moment in the game where you guys kind of tease that you're fighting what will become Robin. It's a sort of like blink and you miss it thing. In fact, I didn't realize it until I started reading some stuff online and like going on along Reddit, and people pointed that out. I was like, "Oh my gosh, wait, did they really do that?" And then obviously tipped it's alluded to a little bit more directly later on. Did you guys want to do anything more with Robin in this game? Because I feel like within, again, the larger Arkhamverse timeline here, that is the one sort of untapped area of this timeline to me, is like when the other members of the Batman family start to come into play. And obviously, you guys have done it here with Oracle, but we have not
Hmm.
seen anything with the Robins or anything with, what happens with Dick and how he ends up becoming Nightwing. They're just all in the later games, and that's that. Did you guys want to do anything else with those, or did you really just sort of want to tee it up there and that be about it?
Well, I'm realizing, Logan, that I get to tiptoe around one more thing,
Oh,
and that will be around Dick Grayson and uh, because we haven't
You
yet
haven't.
fully revealed what that character in the projector room is
Okay.
all about explicitly, but we do intend to do that with an upcoming update to the game in January. So
Okay.
we've got it's what we call version 1.3, which has a brand new cinematic post-credits cinematic, which will feature the rat from the projector room. It
Okay.
will also includes we have new challenge maps that are brand new, not from taken from the campaign, but newly built spaces, which we're going to be talking about more in the coming weeks and months, I'm sure. But yeah, that's part of a larger
Okay.
effort that we're doing, by the way, which is every month we've got these massive updates. We released 1.1 yesterday, which has over 7,000 check-ins from the team and bug fixes, and it's an incredible, huge, massive update to the game. 1.2 comes out, I think, in December, which will include the character viewer, localized voiceovers for non-English languages, more challenge maps, and then when we get into January, we have some MR enhanced content. Yeah, the additional like brand new challenge maps, and then yes, this post credits cinematic,
Okay.
which will hopefully answer some questions that people have about that character.
Okay. I Yeah. Well, I know you're trying to dance around some things. I'll just say I liked what you guys did a lot there.
Thank you.
It's very cool. Um, yeah, it has made me that much more eager, like I said, to kind of I want to see that explored. Like we've had, all the different Batman games now, I feel like Arkham Asylum was very much like the introduction of Joker and stuff, and then you spread it out to the larger rogues gallery in
Mm.
Arkham City, and then you're getting the Batmobile in there with Arkham Knight. We need like some Robin stuff. I feel like it's time for some Robin and some Nightwing or whatever anybody else you guys or otherwise want to do there. Um,
I
but
agree. I think it's time for that story to be explored, and it really does need to be explored if you stretch out the Arkham verse
mhm.
timeline and you look at how quickly actually the three Robins
Yeah,
appear. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of momentum in the established canon for Dick Grayson.
I love it. It's yeah, you guys. Again, I love the game. I think the last thing that I can say to you, no question here, but just I think again, I've seen this sentiment a lot. A lot of excitement around this franchise again. I think it's just been, at rest for such a long period of time here that I think fans have kind of, I don't want to say forgotten about it because everybody's always saying, when are we going to get
Mm,
another Batman Arkham
yeah.
game? But it's just like, it's really rejuvenated me and made me realize like why I like this series so much. And you guys did a fantastic job and made a game that I think really sits alongside every other game in the series here.
Well, thank you. I mean that sentiment really means the world to me and the team. Uh, when you're working on a game like this for 4 years and with with a in a franchise that people love and adore so much and respect, and rightfully so, given the incredible work that Rocksteady and Warner Brothers Montreal and Armature has done in this franchise, it's the ultimate compliment, right? That you and others like the game, because we if you rewind to 4 years ago, we none of us, with the exception of Bill and Sophie, who we end up hiring from who are ex Rocksteady employees, with those two exceptions, everybody at Camouflage had never worked on an Arkham game before. We'd all played the Arkham games, but we're no experts. And to go from basically zero to shipping Arkham Shadow, with people seeming to really respond well to how we handled the existing canon, the character performances, the gameplay, the combat. It just anything and everything that we needed to execute. And I think the team did a really terrific job. And so the fact that people are responding positively to it is just it's a huge relief because you live for 4 years in fear that you're not doing it the right way.
Yeah, I know that's something you guys talked to us about when we visited a couple months back. So I'm glad you're now on the other side of it here and
I'm on the other side.
you can start to start to breathe a sigh of relief that things have
Absolutely.
panned out this way. Um, Brian, that's gonna do it. I could talk to you for a way longer time, but I know we're running out of time here.
Likewise.
Uh,
Likewise.
Thank you so much for your time here. I really enjoyed diving into spoilers with you. Hopefully, this is not your guys's. I know you said you're doing a lot more with Arkham Shadow. Would love to see you guys do something else with the series here in the future. So I will cross my
Thank you. Well,
fingers and
yeah,
hope that
maybe we
that
could talk.
happens.
Yeah, maybe we could talk again once um, the post credit scene comes
Yeah.
goes live, and it'd be it'd be fun to talk to you
Yeah.
again.
I'll stay in touch. We'll try to do something else around then. So
Sounds good.
cool. Until next time, everybody. Thank you for watching.